Good evening. Welcome everyone to the San Francisco Public Library to this evening's special edition of Poem Jam. I'm John Smalley and I'm a librarian with the Humanities Center on the third floor here. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to acknowledge our community. On behalf of the Public Library, we wish to welcome you to the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as caretakers of this place. As guests, we who reside in their traditional territory recognize that we benefit from living and working on their homeland. We wish to pay respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. If anyone is here for the first time, I just want to let you know that the Poem Jam poetry reading series takes place on the second Thursday of each month and is curated by poet Kim Shuck. If you want to learn more about upcoming programs, there are flyers in the library newsletter on the coffee table to your right. You can also find a limited edition of the Poem Jam pin, as well as coffee and cookies there. And I will mention next month, September, we're not meeting, we're taking 1 month off, but I hope you will return to an action-packed October. And on October 9th, the Poem Jam will celebrate poets who write in Spanish or some combination of Spanish and English. We will also have programs with Hospitality House, a celebration of the Persian poet Ahmed Shamlu, and several other poetry programs. So I hope you will come back in October. That ends my introductory comments. Now, please give a warm welcome to Kim Shuck.
Hey, folks. Thank you for coming tonight. There are some faces I don't know, which is sort of fun for this kind of thing. So thank you for being here. We've been doing these readings for a good minute now. And in order to not repeat myself a whole lot, I periodically just invite somebody to put a show together. And the requirement for that is I have to like their work a whole lot and trust them a whole lot. And Jennifer Hasegawa is one of those people who, so this is why this show got put together, is that I was busily working on 2 honoring shows that are happening in November, one for Pat Parker and one for Janice Gould, and sort of trying to track down a couple of poets who rarely answer their phone, don't deal with email, and are not on social media. And I was watching my feed from Facebook go by. Jennifer is celebrating a publication, and I went, you know, we've worked together like a couple of times on things, which has led to us reading on the same bill like twice. I think twice. And I thought, it's somebody I really want to hear more of, because I always love your work when I hear it. And the way to do that is to get you to come here, because I am fretfully busy at all times. So I reached out and you said yes. And then you put this show together with phenomenal poets. So you guys have a treat. I'm pretty sure, because I don't know who you are, audience, that you probably know it's going to be phenomenal and you're here for specific reasons. So without a whole lot of further fluffing, I'm going to invite Mary Berger to come up, who has been in the city around 30 years and feels like it's home. So please welcome Mary up to the microphone. Big hoopla, come on.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you to the library. Thank you to Jennifer. I'm very glad to be reading with Jennifer and Norma and Truong, people I'm happy to call friends as well as inspirations. Congratulations to Jennifer and Norma for their new books. And of course, Truong has many highly regarded works. You can enjoy all of those. In the spirit of memory, I'm going to be reading from the manuscript of a memoir I finished a while ago. I wrote this work to engage with the sort of cognitive dissonance of family memory, the fact that we never know enough about the things that shape us the most. In my case, and I think probably for a lot of us, there are unreliable narrators, there are gaps and aporias and contradictions in the stories we're told about the people who shaped us the most in our early lives. So the working title of this was Notes Toward a Speculative Memoir. And now it's been retitled Pool of Stars. The only things you need to know are that I have 6 much older siblings. There are 2 events I mentioned in passing here that are very important in the course of the book, but are only briefly referred to here. One is a suicide attempt by one of my older sisters, and my diagnosis with cancer when I was 18. My brother Ron, oldest in the family, 24 years older than me, missed the calling hours when our father died, but he made it to the funeral. It was the second time I'd met him. He'd moved to Southern California just after I was born to work at a General Motors plant. I expect it was the California promise of beach culture, swimming pools, movie stars, and all that drew him all the way to LA, when he could have gotten the same job in Detroit a few hours from home. He'd written letters and probably called sometimes in the first 2 or 3 years after he left, but he'd never come back to visit. Finally, gradually, my parents had lost contact with him. I knew of him through photos and mementos and reminiscences. Black and white snapshots of him with his sisters, our sisters, opening Christmas presents. After a winter storm, a shot of him at age 12 or so, standing on the little gable over the front door of the yellow brick house and pushing off snow. The same house where I would live with our parents and other siblings years later. His high school graduation picture with his jet black hair combed into a careful pompadour. When our mother talked about his favorite toy, a stuffed elephant, I felt like I remembered it too. She'd saved his American Flyer electric trains and would bring them out for my other 2 brothers to play with. In any mention of him as a young man, the point of the story was always how much he loved cars. I'd learned another piece of his history by accident when I was 10 or 12. I was out to dinner with my parents at the restaurant they'd once owned. Our old brick house still sat behind the restaurant building, but there was no more path connecting the two. The restaurant had been dressed up from a family diner to a sort of supper club, with white tablecloths, low lights, and thick carpeting. My parents were friendly with the new owner, and they liked to stop in every few months. That night, a woman in the restaurant recognized them. She'd known Ron in high school. "How's he doing?" she asked. "I never heard anything about him since the divorce." My parents' discomfort paralyzed me. So, he'd gotten married just before he left Ohio. But when they'd gotten to California, his wife wasn't who she seemed to be, our sister Molly told me years later. Implying what? That she spent all of their money? That she slept with other men? The marriage had ended quickly. No other explanation was ever offered to me. Ron had merged for me into the cloud of our extended kin, the catalog of names I barely knew. Of my mother's many brothers and sisters, only the 2 oldest brothers were nearby. The rest were back in Minnesota, or even farther west on the plains. I saw them only a few times in my life. My father's oldest brother had left for California years before I was born, and my father never saw him again. Having an absent older brother seemed, if not inevitable, then something not easily open to question. There was no movement on the matter of Ron, nor even any apparent grief or urgency. My mother's attachment to him was evident, though. As with so many things, this didn't translate into her taking action. Or maybe she had no idea what action to take. And then, when I was around 20, finished with my round of cancer and my summer in New York, and more or less set on a path at school, Ron resurfaced. Not of his own accord. Our oldest sister, Linda, just 1 year younger than Ron, and so perhaps as inclined as our mother to feel his absence, had enlisted a police officer to track him down. Before the internet, it was the police and private eyes who found people. I don't know why no one had thought to do this sooner. My mother called me at school, awestruck with expectation. Ron was coming to Ohio. She was going to see her oldest son. I was going to meet my brother. She and Dad brought him up to see me on a Sunday afternoon. He was a little shorter than our father, the same thick, dark hair, a Burt Reynolds mustache. An interest in style revealed in a patterned rayon shirt and pressed slacks. Our father's same taciturnity. Though as with our father, I'm sure there was a side to him I didn't see. The four of us walked around campus, our parents ahead of us, Ron and me behind. Could there have been a more awkward foursome in history? What could we possibly have said to each other? I suppose I asked him about Los Angeles. Maybe he asked how I liked school. After a while, we must have gone out to lunch at least. The three of them got in the car and went home. I can picture no dramatic reconciliation scene between Ron and our parents. No outpouring of, why didn't you? How could you? Or even, thank God you. After the visit, he slipped back below the surface, out on the West Coast and out of sight. But now he was among the living. Our mother could call him, write to him, and maybe he even wrote back sometimes. The most visible impact on our father was that Ron had convinced him to trade in our American-made family car for a more expensive German model. Ron's love of cars was still the identifier that everyone clung to, as if it stood in for a personality, as if this was the most salient thing about himself that he was able to share. I was relieved to have this rent in my family fabric sewn up, or at least kept from tearing wider, though there was no sense in which I gained a brother. Our meeting had made clear how little connection there would ever be between him and me. Instead of catharsis, my lifelong low-level suspense over my missing brother dissolved into a new low-level disappointment that my family now felt more foreign to me than ever. After Ron's reappearance, my siblings seemed resigned, even unconflicted, about his long, unexplained absence. From time to time, one or another of them would speculate on what he'd been doing all those years and why he'd stayed away, but with no trace of judgment or even pointed inquiry. It was as if everyone simply accepted his minimal marginal participation in our family as a natural fact, as incontestable as weather or topography, a status that seemed to apply to so many conditions in the family. Gail, for her part, seemed to maintain an amused younger sister tolerance toward Ron, as if they were still in high school, as if his long absence were no more remarkable than if he'd come home late one night after hanging out at the drive-in. It was nearly 3 years later when Ron appeared again for our father's funeral. By this time, he'd retired from GM. He was young for retirement, not yet 50, but in those days of strong auto workers' unions and pension plans, I guess 20 years on a job was enough for a lifetime. And he'd moved from LA to Las Vegas to avoid the traffic from the 1984 Summer Olympics, he said, a claim that nobody but me seemed to find strange. Wasn't traffic second nature to anyone who lived in LA? Wouldn't the crowds for the Olympics be gone after a few weeks? This time, I got to see him interact with the family. Mostly, this meant him showing snapshots of his cars, a vintage Corvette, a British racing car, and of his Las Vegas condo, complete with a pool room and a bar. In one shot, a woman in a tight pink dress posed on the pool table. "Who's that?" I asked, because I wanted to press him. I wanted more than a few worn tropes of Playboy life. Nobody. She's not my girlfriend. It also came out on those several days of the funeral and the aftermath, in murmured conversations between Ron and our brothers and brothers-in-law that filtered down to our sisters and me, but never, I think, to our mother, that his GM job, or that is, his GM paycheck, hadn't been the only source of his income. I pieced together that he'd been part of some insider scheme where he and his cronies, our father would have called them, his word for any band of offenders from small-town bookies to Nixon's White House, had stolen parts from the GM plant and sold them underground. When Ron left GM, he'd gone to Las Vegas for some other investment opportunities, which, he'd assured our brothers, didn't involve gambling or drugs. Anyone I've talked to about my absent older brother, friends, lovers, therapists, has wanted a more satisfying narrative. What happened to make him disappear for so long? Why didn't someone do something to find him? I've tried to think what our parents might have had to do with it. Given their obvious shame about Ron's divorce, such shame that they never once mentioned his marriage to me, I can imagine that our father had issued some condemnation, had made some judgment against his son. I can imagine because he did exactly that 20 years later when my brother Frank announced his own divorce after a short, untenable marriage. But we'd all survived eruptions of our father's anger at different times, and even Frank hadn't removed himself from the family in the aftermath. Our father's antagonism didn't seem answer enough. There's also the event of Gail's near death, her suicide attempt, which would have happened soon after Ron's divorce. Maybe our mother, dealing with one child's life-threatening trauma while caring for her 7th toddler and the several other children still at home, missed a few beats in keeping up with her oldest son so far away. But there were letters from Ron to her in those years, even after his divorce, that we found later after she died. He hadn't lost touch instantly. It had happened gradually over several more years. Now I think that, given his eventual life choices, he avoided the family because he just didn't want our scrutiny. His murky criminality, his cliched ostentation, provoked my quiet scorn. But the man and boy he'd been to me all the years before I'd met him, his place at the top of the long branch of siblings on our family tree, were a separate thing. In fact, it was his absence in its unbroken purity that had made its mark on me. The space my mother held for him during all the years he was gone, the same years when I was growing up, became another of the spaces that I internalized, another place to fill with longing and remorse. That lambent space has proved more powerful than any encounters I was to have, direct or secondhand, with the living man. Though of course the two play off of one another, the poignancy of my fantasy space is heightened by its stark contrast with the man himself. His story resists comparison to the prodigal son. He didn't come home in search of redemption after defeat. Though maybe my own reaction mimics the jealous brother in the parable, I'd wanted to find in Ron some sign of regret for all the years he'd missed with us, some sign that he still wanted a place in our family. I suppose I wanted the same thing that I'd wanted with our father, some feeling that he wanted to know me, that he wanted me to know him. Thank you.
That was phenomenal. Can we have another round of applause? This horrible thing happens to me when I'm listening to good writers read their own stuff, and it's that I just get completely distracted by that. And sometimes I am then afflicted by a poem. I don't know how many of you are writers in the audience, but that can happen, you know, where the poem attacks you and you're sitting there writing it, and then I'm like, oh, right. I'm the compere. I need to get up and say something now. Our next reader is Norma Cole, who is just pretty much a legend. And we just had a short conversation before the event, and I found out something that's funny, because I always sort of think, I know people who know people. I rarely think of myself as that part of the conversation as well. So apparently we've both been hearing about one another for some time from friends that we have in common. So with no further ado, I'd like to invite you to the...
Being a legend, that means just I am old now, so, yeah. Right, yeah, yeah. I'm really excited and happy to be reading here, and really honored to be at the library. The libraries mean so much to me, and really honored to be with Kim and reading with Mary, Jennifer, and Truong. I have such warm feelings. We've read before, all of us, but not Kim, because we just met. All right. I'm going to read from my new book, Alibi, Lullaby. And it starts with an epigraph from 4,000 years ago. It was on a clay tablet somewhere in Mesopotamia. It was in Old Babylonian, and I don't know any Old Babylonian, so I have to read the English translation. And we don't know actually how it was sung. We don't know anything about how the words were, but we know it's a lullaby. Little one who dwelt in the house of darkness, well, you are outside now, have seen the light of the sun. Why are you crying? Why are you yelling? Take a look. Take history, take power. At no point sufficient accident of memory, the common truth, conditions of visibility, unstable orbit, explain nothing in the history of contestation. Truth cure, it's a start, unfit for use. Nescio, not knowing task or matter. Insufficient uncertainties pose limits of understanding. The commission, memory itself. The matter. The chatter of the world is just a breath. That's from Dante, Purgatorio. Conditions in the moment. Conditions in the present moment. Conditions are melting in the present moment. Lost in different tempi, a striking concentration of them in it and of it. But when the state withdraws from the social contract, walking dream, the armature, a striking concentration, remove system from sound. Someday will mean that these large-scale stained glass windows seem essential to private time. Moon in Scorpio, fallen asleep, but not where you wake up. Can you place this photo from the broken old Bible? Tell us the end and ruin everything, the pink cloud, the ridge line, and everything. Grassland, aspen groves, stand of redwood trees. Trees make the light. Sense of distance, prospect ever-changing, feverish refraction. Mind not inclined, for the story is not found here. Namaste. Salutations, my child. You, in your heart, heard the basics, the basic first finger, the travel of music, a fictional gun, the gesture of folding, romance of the exit. Any hour, there's nothing of imagining history at the shore, drifting from time to time. The key here, imagination and failure, its own zeal, pretends that starts here, grasping the key here, meaning the evidence. Like us, they once had time. Daily life. Same attention, indeterminate in the moment, rain with the road grounded to itself, like suddening ink to never settle, to stay at home, to start at home. Memory of predicament, all the pages live and looking back, long takes in the dark, with the book in question. An ordinary evening, epigraph. To act is to be committed. To be committed is to be in danger. James Baldwin. An ordinary evening is to be in danger. The sweet hello, don't entrance the heart of the meter, for massacres continue on summer nights. Troubled by bound reality is the fault we endorse. Some ending is right now. No events, the thing like forks, spoons, words not meant today. How round things tip over, the bowl of experience, see it or sink. When dust rules, voice off, listen, cloud, principle, asked or not, choose to get there, islands for silence, time approaches. Islands for silence, sooner or later, time approaches. Highly volatile, almost asleep and not get their footing. Uncanny vault at its valley, simple acts, body fusion, polar events, listen like clouds, voice off, pin up the past, news from a porch, the heart of the meter. The principal fault is its ending. Trip over it, mountains of suspense, scent of fennel in summer. Midsummer lights, massacres continue, that crinkling shovel sound. It's muse or not, the sign-shaped sign, flat as a verse. Night watch. Rearrange the disturbance itself in the field, the night, the baby. Whom should I send? The question don't fit. The drop stitch, it needed to go. Forgotten lament, the baby itself. No compass, but cement itself, the chosen agent. Remains, returns. While we sleep, records pretend tangible, nothing to know, to explain, not to reclaim. An occasion to discover base camp is thought office of questions or concrete concerns. Special measures dare to return, to dare to look for rough risks by early afternoons when stars appear. Nothing to explain but state-sponsored special measures. See the light? Not the means, like a small wave in motion. You can't see when you look. Peculiar energy behaves revolution without traits, without the past, ground into dust. Contradictory resolutions present together, superposition. See the inference? Looks like a proposition, makes sense. We'll make a case of interference as of yet inhabiting, not gesturing limits of nostalgia, extended dissolves like writing on a wall, little motherfucker. Is scattering open across a condition of survival, harmonic device, inner life, the instrument. And this is the image of articulation protected. Show it the exact location overlooking a tree, any distant planet, exact conditions. Alibi equals elsewhere. Mirages claim a piece of evidence. Images remember the cadence. Think of others. This think of others relates to Mahmoud Darwish, his poem called "Think of Others." It's on it's in online. You can find it. It's easy, and it's just gorgeous. What? Yeah. And nothing like lost knowledge, a shovel, the secret hello, the soldiers' news from the heart of the meter. Blurry reconstruction, still standing on the corner. Gutter lossy, the big star formation, the chance to understand something like hallucinations or power dynamics tip over. Words not meant for massacres continue on summer lights. I'll finish with this poem, Night Market. Rock or tree, inflection of tree, wild asparagus and watercress, weeping and leaving, parting and fleeing, atmosphere, as always, the distance when the sun was still shining, scattering ardor, a metal form, straight as a cypress, youthful and unnecessary, single or double, green or variegated, sensation, recording, upheaval, desertion or deception, to protect a love, lore on a tablet, the song, a minimal grammar, walls, bridges, cement could take the weight. Lamentations of fire, the easy kill in the night. Thank you. Thank you.
I do understand how some people read in a way that feels like a spell, and you don't want to break it with the applause. Oh, Rupa, hi. But it's also a little lonely at the microphone, so it's good to give energy back to the reader, no matter how starstruck or like bemused or ensorcelled you happen to be. Our next reader is somebody who I keep thinking I know you, but I kind of don't know you because we haven't been around one another enough. But I'm trying to get better about hunting those relationships down a little more than usual and making sure they happen. I think the first time, well, I think the most significant time we read together was during a project called Wall and Response that was run by Ma Shane Nguyen and Megan Wilson. And that was a pretty spectacular thing. And your writing for that was phenomenal. So now that I've set you up, please welcome Jennifer Hasegawa up to this microphone. Good. Thank you for making some noise.
I'm inspired by your intros to each person, where they just are authentically how you're feeling in the moment and how you remember. And it's not this sort of rehearsed thing from Wikipedia. And I really aspire to be as authentic and sincere as you are, Kim. So thank you very much for inviting us this evening. And thank you for the library. And thank you for Truong, Mary, and Norma for taking the time to share their work with us. Tonight I'm going to read from Naomi Anime, A Biography of Infinite Desire. It's a new book of poems I have out with Omnidon. It's the same season as Norma. So very happy to be publisher mates with you in that way. So Naomi Anime, I don't want to be that person who over-explains, but anime is a pretty uncommon word, so maybe I thought I'd say just a couple of words about it. So anime is a word that I found as I was writing this book during the COVID-19 pandemic, and when I found it, it resonated with me so much it made it into the title of the book. And it is about a state of normlessness and what happens in society when those usual cues, those values, those guideposts that we share go away and break down and leave us as a people without the guidance and connections that we usually have in society, and leave us sort of vulnerable and divided. And maybe I'll stop there and I'll just start reading from the book. It's in 4 sections, and it follows Naomi's travels or journey toward a state of anime. And so I'm going to just read chronologically through that journey. Hilo Shopping Center, Easter egg hunt of 1976. Her first egg hunt was a lesson in war and domination. She returned with one stepped-on candy egg bursting from its plastic suit, red dirt stuck to fluffy white innards meant for mouths. She handed it to Mother, who took one step closer to death. Hollow plastic eggs equal power. Why savage for frivolous things? How to escape this room labeled born weak. She collapsed into the lap of the beautiful superorganism. Ants took her in their shackles, tiny amber jewels, eating this accidental autocrat into ash. The ruddy-faced apostle who fed them freshly churned butter every Sunday came running. Tropical Pietà, Caucasian angel, held her like an auto harp and sang her into an urn, reconfigured by fire. Fairy tale agape, body now a tabernacle and never more willing to lose. Never formally learned, when pressured, could perform. What these teens bore, driving donuts in abandoned sugarcane fields, the copper dirt they inhaled made them audacious tropical alpinists. Grandfathers they never met surfed their fiberglass spoilers, sickles in hand. All they had were cigarettes and schnapps to get them where they were asked to go. Hoods hot with the anarchy of pubarchy, magnified by the presence of ball lightning, cascades of capillary molten glass, and termite wings. Aching with Americana, they caught migration in one hand, forced metamorphosis in the other. Does this sexual cannibalism make her look fat? From the first touch of an unwashed hand, a garden grew. Shady delta of strangers. It learned the patterns of phone numbers to female dorms. Feet, tail, wings, beak, body feathers. Dial pad sonations, rapid macro reversals of beg and discard. The value of rhythm in birdsong and the courtship of beetles. Starved for the delicious nada, basking in the luminous conceit of gonads, she drives fertility like a founding father, witnesses the joy of gonadoids making a salad of her future. Not yet, it said, as if asking for more time on a playground swing, its machinations an ice cube in the knee pit, her body a controlled substance, increased risk of black box warning printed on the whites of her eyes. Let's see here. He claims the transformer is a surveillance camera. Come back, LA woman, oozing from the tailpipe of a Crown Victoria, police interceptor, red-lipped invader, driving down your highways, careless and high on binding intentions into physical form. Motel, honey, hoarder, madness, vulva towering above sunset, tops in copless bars, amulet of athleticism, won $20 with a scratch card, pizza slices and Coke on the curb, wacko truth serum, pissed the bed and it felt like drowning. Lifeguard Peggy, silver whistle, glitchy form at the bottom of the pool, so alone, forgot which laundry had her interview suit so lone. He drove her around, examining utility poles. The hills are full of wire. Pig head in the market, eyes open, teeth glistening, where the best meat comes from. Once you taste it, you won't be able to stop. She expected an endless loop of imperceptible atomic transitions, but instead came transmissions of blessings, patron saint of doing the best you can. Palliative salve to the loneliest night hunters, compulsively checking the city of light for a time so good they'll never have another. Groundwater, groundswell for Anita Sanabria Castillo. Loyal, covert laundress, washed out stains and pressed panties for the first families, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush. A few years of the Clintons' clothes, and A wrote to Barbara, "I'm retiring." Silver Fox said, "Stay, we're coming back." A party in the East Room, anointed Junior next in line. They've picked the next president, A told me. Shake, veil, shake to be seen. It's 1997 and snowing in Queens. 3 years later, Junior rode in, right hand raised and left hand on the Sunshine State. A freighter idled in the deep water harbor, full of .22 caliber Paraguayan nightshade. They traffic in sleepwalking and water, rights to 300,000 acres of the Gran Chaco, everywhere the color of toast. She touched that land where children sell ground cherries by the roadside, faces streaked with juice and the brand of dust that vibrates above Aquifero Guarani. Water underground, rippling like bat fat in blackout pools the size of 3 Californias. Psychopomp, ferry her, drink the ballot as the blood of George, accept results as the body of Abraham, Adam, Eve, and exit polls, burning bush and ballot box. It's the greatest show on earth. Vote. It's the real thing. If successful, they fall to the ground and die. The matriarch threw the gravy boat against the kitchen wall and told everyone to go to hell. Then she got on the porch swing and swung so high they never saw her again. From the outside, everything looked so inviting. On the inside, nothing could survive. The girl closed her eyes, and translucent brown drippings lullabied her to sleep. The moon hid its full white body. Tides cried over the weight of so much water. Morbidly obese infidels in the church of smallness. Poppies unbloomed, trapping workers into stinging stamens until their honeyed guts sent signals. At sunrise, blossoms reopened, spilling bodies like whole cloves. Antidote to disciplined nightbirds flying themselves into the ground. just a spoonful, and she moved faster than the speed of light. Mass impossibly infinite. There is carnage in the battle to love a body. She broke the laws of physics with her own bones to escape the gravity of all she didn't need. Thanks. And I'll close with this, called O Placenta. Hovering over dark hills, flying saucer so thick in the middle with blood. Vigilant over soft crops, 8 billion bipeds, all failures of the flesh before this singular perfection lay hidden in the rocks. Bat, pangolin whale, elk, opossum, human, warm-blooded, fur-bearing, live, young, suckling, bound for ghost lineage Neverland. She's so self-centered. When whales breastfeed, their milk thick as toothpaste floats in water. She's so self-centered. When marsupials mate, a bifurcated penis enters 2 vaginas connected to 2 uteruses. Glory, a baby emerges from a 3rd and transient canal. She's so self-centered. When she was inside, she herself was a foreign body. If she touched her home of tissue and bone, its cells would have devoured her. Little being, capable of what? O placenta, love song to an ancient retrovirus that laid down the good grounds for immune privilege. Hidden virality, domesticated, mutating and free to roam. Dawn Mother arrived in her purple river car, hips wide enough to bear the earth. Afterbirth eaten under neon signs, flashing food, gas, and clean restrooms. Add to 3 cups milk and drink. Drink the elixir of connected destinies. What you say is a hallucination, and real machines can't look you in the eye. When viruses communicate, they don't have to lie.
Thank you so much for that. You were behind the pillar. There you are. Yeah, the thing about introducing people in a more offhand way comes from having been introduced a lot with the most unusual things I've ever done in my life. So, like, people will read my bio that they've decided they don't like the one I've sent them, and they read my bio, which is some Franken thing that they've cobbled together from stuff they've found on the internet. And I've managed to track down and eradicate a lot of the things that I didn't like. But still, it's weird and alienating. And all of that is a preamble to say the first time I heard about Truong Tran's work was recommended to me by Gail Mitchell, and who had never recommended a poet to me before. Like, never, ever. And she's known me since I was probably 7 years old. So, yeah, there's nothing like being born in the town you end up poeting in. Everybody, all of the older poets have heard of you somehow, usually because you screamed in the middle of their set at some point. Anyway, the investigation that followed was completely worthwhile, and I would love to have you welcome Truong Tran to this microphone.
Thank you, Kim. There is really no reason why I should be the last reader tonight, because I'm reading in the presence of my literary hero, so, but thank you. So Mary, I haven't seen Mary since before the pandemic. Jennifer, always present in my life. And Norma, I don't know if you remember, but we were supposed to read together 20 years ago, and our schedules didn't align. And today I get to fulfill that dream, so thank you. I'm going to read from a manuscript that is, I wrote a collection of essays that somehow was handed off to a publisher. They said, we can't sell a book of essays in this time, so if you want, we can market it as a memoir. So I haven't signed the contract yet, but I'm hoping that it will happen. So I'm going to read from that. And this is an homage to the library. So, on reading as a way of looking, seeing. It occurred to me that even as I am writing a book on art and writing, I have yet to make a single reference to a writer. Perhaps now is as good a time as any to come clean of this little known fact. I do not like reading. Well, it's not that I don't like reading, it's just that I am not a good reader. I grew up thinking that there must be something wrong. Nothing I read in school ever made sense. History, science, that thing in math they referred to as word problems. I called them word salads. Words mixed up and made indigestible, incomprehensible. Throughout school, reading was an act of regurgitation. I threw up this language without ever being fed. I resorted to the desperate act of memorization. It kept me from failing, but I barely passed. This began as an essay about dyslexia. I thought I was going to do my part to shed some light on a condition that many of us live with. I have lived with it my entire life. I've written thus far in an effort to arrive at a declaration. I don't like reading. I'm not a good reader. I was going to take that as a position and claim my love of writing and the imagination. That thing we often do of taking the bad and making it good, forcing a circle into a square. That concept won't make it to the finish line on this go around. Also, folks, 2 weeks ago I read and I discovered that I had lost a big part of my eyesight. And someone walked up to the podium and handed me a pair of glasses. And I was so grateful for that. And it's happening again, so. I'm not used to these also. That concept won't make it to the finish line on this go-round. It is too important to me, and as such, I still need to find a way to write about it with clarity. What I am clear on for now is that I do not have it in me to write about the subject just yet. I'll give it some time. Maybe by the time I arrive at an ending for this book, there are still things still in the way. This notion of not liking to read felt false even as I was writing it down. I spent a lot of time in libraries like many of the poor immigrant kids growing up. Our mothers discovered a not so well-kept secret. It was that librarians were babysitters free of charge. They didn't ask questions. Several days during the school week, I would be instructed by my mother to go to the library while on my way home. Stay at the library. Do not come home until it closes or before it gets dark, depending on the seasons or whether she was offered overtime. I was instructed to do my homework and then read a book. Instead, I spent my afternoons looking at pictures. I had a penchant for home decor, cookbooks, and cars. They were the wholesome dreams of a hungry 12-year-old. This was true to a certain extent, but who am I kidding here? I spent a lot of time looking at the images of naked men. In books and magazines and on the covers of romance novels, anatomy books, sex ed books, physical health, bodybuilding magazines, Edvard Muybridge's Complete Human and Animal Locomotions, and sometimes, if I'm lucky, the pages inside Cosmopolitan. I spent my time looking and seeing, but rarely was I reading. Still, this is written about the act of reading. It came by way of seeing first. It was the cover of Anne Rampling's Exit to Eden. It was an illustration of a man's upper torso. He was presumably naked, with 3 crisscrossing lash marks on his lower back, extending down towards his lower backside. I am trying to get the details of this right because I'm trying to locate that very moment when I discovered my love of language. 12 years old, and there I was hiding in a corner of this library in a reading nook with my head buried in a novel about sadomasochism. I hid the book jacket behind a column-spine row of other books. I devoured every word on every page. The book enthralled me. The book entailed an S&M relationship between a young man and an older woman, written from the alternating perspectives of a woman and her submissive. All this language of the present moment of writing this memory was never a part of that memory in its time. At 12 years of age, I read a book written about a very adult subject meant to be read by other adults. I didn't understand all of its titillations, but I understood its implication. I discovered language's dirty little secret. It told me I was gay again and again, and I loved it for that very reason. I read and reread each time, knowing a little more. For months and years, I kept returning to that library to read the earmarked pages of my favorite parts. There were many. I found the courage one day, somewhere in my teenage years, I brought the book to the checkout counter. I slid the book with the Brodart covered jacket on to the attending librarian. She looked at the cover. She made a comment about it looking like an interesting read, and then she stamped it with a return date. No questions asked. This is not what I had hoped for. I set out to write about dyslexia. It happened one day. For now, I've written all this just to arrive at saying this. I do like reading, but I'm still not a good reader. And the writer of that book was better known as Anne Rice. Yes, the same Anne Rice who wrote of vampires and New Orleans and covens of witches, and Eliot, the submissive, who was my first and only literary crush. Thank you.
Well, that was spectacular. Can I have another round of applause for our readers? Mary, Norma, Jennifer, Truong, thank you all for being here. There is actually a reason you were last. One of them is actually that Jennifer put you there, but I would put you there anyway because I want to make it really easy for people from the library to be able to find your reading for here, because I fully expect that you will eventually be the Poet Laureate of San Francisco, having been in meetings on occasion. And I just really want to make it easy for people to see what they're voting on. So that's why you're last. When nominations open again, you guys are all perfectly welcome to nominate. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. We have a little tradition, just so the readers know, where you take a picture after, just so that I can have a flip book of all of the people I've had at this reading series. And I think this time we're going to do it here because there's a chair there, and that's going to make it easier. So we're going to do that afterwards, and we have to quit this room, I'm going to say by about 20 after, in order to not be confronted with guards trying to get us to leave. So anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you to all the readers. Thank you to the AV department for showing up every time, and making us all look spectacular. Thank you, John, who is basically the other half of getting these things out there John Smalley, who's at the back of the room. He's also the reason there are cookies. And thank you to my partner, Doug, who is the reason that there are buttons. So grab a button, and we're going to take a picture, and thanks for showing up.